You're listening to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum focused and dedicated 100% to sales development. If you care about growing your skills and getting more new sales appointments, pipeline, and closed-won deals, you came to the right place. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, iTunes, or Spreaker, and be sure to go back and listen to all the episodes for the best strategies, tips, and tactics out there on running a high-performance sales development program. And now, your host, founder, and CEO of Tenbound at tenbound.com, David Delaney.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Development Podcast. I am on the line with Sarah Harbison Tosh. Now, you just recently changed your name. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Oh, yes.
I got married in July, and my husband, I still haven't legally changed my name yet, and he gives me slack about it every day, so I'm getting there.
Well, welcome. I'm glad I said that right. And Sarah, you're the Director of Sales Development and Enablement at SDR. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I want to dig in. If folks don't know you, they haven't met you yet, tell us, how did you get into sales development and what was your path to become the director?
Yeah, great question. So right out of college, I spent a few years out in the Bay Area working at Stanford University and decided to come back to the Midwest for some family reasons. And when I found myself back in Indianapolis, I was a big brat. And at the time, I didn't want to be in Indy. And I said, well, if I'm in Indianapolis, I want to work for the best company that Indy has. And at the time, it was ExactTarget, which is now Salesforce. So I started my career in sales development with ExactTarget. I went through that acquisition with them. I did this fun liaison role where I was supporting both ExactTarget and also Salesforce. But my time there really, gave me that love for sales development. It also taught me how to be a part of a machine and be scalable with everything that I'm doing. I was there for about 2 years. I met my husband there. I met some of my best friends there. It made me fall back in love with Indianapolis, which is where I live now. But at the time, the VP that I reported up into was leaving to go be the CMO at a company called ReturnPath. They work within the email deliverability space. So at the time, being an eager 25-year-old, my former boss, Scott Roth, who's now the CEO at Jama Software out in Portland, said, hey, Sarah, come on over to ReturnPath and help us start our sales development team. They had historically tried to do sales development, didn't work out. And for the last 6 years, they'd been outsourcing it, and that wasn't working out. So they said, let's try this again. Can you come over here and be our first SDR? By the way, I'll pay you quite a bit more than what you're making now. So I said, sure, let's do it. And ReturnPath was starting an office in Indianapolis. So it was a super fun environment. I had the backing of a 500-person company, but we were operating very much like a startup. I joked that our first office was literally a coat closet, no walls or no windows. There was 4 of us in a room, but it was so much fun. So helped build their sales development team, build their pipeline. And 6 months into that role, they said, knock, 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 Sarah, we want to start an inside sales team. Would you be our first account executive? I said, well, sure, sign me up. I've never really held a quota, but I'll do it. So I sold for a few years, sold in the Bay Area, had a blast doing that, and then got tapped on the shoulder again and said, our team is so big, we want you to manage and lead a team. So I spent some time managing an account executive team. That's really where I fell in love with. I knew I always had a passion for it, but for teaching, enabling, and leading people. But I knew I had this itch. I think a lot of it comes from my dad's background in small business, but I had the kind of startup small business itch. So when SDR came knocking on my door and told me they were in the process of receiving some Series A funding and was looking for a sales development leader to really grow and scale the team, I knew it was a match made in heaven. So I've been at SDR for a little over a year now. When I started, we were at 2 people on the team. Both of them have been promoted to account executive. Now we're sitting pretty at about 13 folks, and we're contributing about 80% of our total pipeline right now. So it has been such a fun ride, and I know it's literally just the beginning.
Okay, so I want to dig in on that, but there's a pattern that you're identifying that people keep tapping you on the shoulder and wanting you to do stuff. So what are you doing to get those taps on the shoulder? And, how can someone emulate that if they're just kind of sitting there and nobody's tapped them on the shoulder for 5 years?
Yeah, in part of my French, I work my ass off, and I'm someone who, when I show up 100%, and I know that can be frustrating and annoying at times, but that's just the way I am. I'm also a big believer in a lot of times other people can see things in you that maybe you don't see in yourself. We'll talk about this, but our team recently started this sales development competition that's called the SDR Wars. So it's really gamifying the work of sales development teams out there. But the whole goal of this is building your network so people can recognize things in you and tap you on your shoulder and maybe poke on strengths and weaknesses, because sometimes you don't always recognize that about yourself.
Nice. Okay. That's I saw that. That's really interesting. And I do want to talk more about the SDR wars, but, so work your ass off, show up 100%, and then identify your strengths and weaknesses, keep networking. When you show up 100%, what does that mean? And why you said that could be irritating to some people. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I mean, it means preparing. Every meeting, every conversation that you're involved in, I'm a big believer in preparation. That's the one thing that you control in sales, right? You control how prepared you are for every conversation, every meeting. And I think that same way for internal meetings as well. So that's a big thing. But, outside of that too, it's leaning in and it's engaging and really poking holes in a topic and creating this concept of healthy candor, healthy conflict. We're at 75 employees today. So every idea is a great idea. You have to find an organization that aligns with your own values and morals and framework. And for me, it's being a part of an environment that is constantly thinking, how do we go outside the box? How do we create something that doesn't exist today? I think that's a lot of it. Find something that aligns to you and be passionate about it. Lean in.
Go for it. And what do you say? The SDR job is can get repetitive, and you're dealing with a lot of no's and not interested and stuff like that. What do you say when an SDR comes to you and they're like, I am leaning in. I'm going out 100% of what I can do, and it's just I'm getting really frustrated right now.
Yeah, something that I look for when I hire people is someone who is motivated by the no. It makes them so mad to hear no. To be successful in sales, I'm a firm believer in you got to control what you can control, and you got to be able to deal with the ebbs and flows, because at the end of the game, you're in it for the long haul, right? So if you're consistent with what you're delivering, you'll be all right. You may have a good month one month, you may have a bad month next month. That's okay. So first, just finding people and finding those questions in your interview process where you can measure if someone truly is motivated by that no and has that healthy competitive mindset. But I think it's also just really staying focused on the bigger picture. When you're feeling down, when my team's feeling down, what I always remind them of is this ship doesn't stay afloat without our team, right? We are the blood of this company. Without us, we don't have any pipeline. Without pipeline, we don't close business. Without closing business, the lights go off here at Sigster and none of us have jobs, right?
Yes.
We are the skeleton of Sigster. So always remember that. Hopefully that can motivate you and get you beyond those 30 no's that you heard in the last day or whatnot. But I think it's also, and I don't know if this is right. I kind of struggle with this a little bit, but you look at the demographic of who sales development teams are today. In my case, I had 2 years of professional experience before I jumped into an SDR role. It was more of that entry level role. But in a lot of ways, it's so backwards if you think about it, right? You have an SDR start on your team and you're asking them within a week to call a CMO at, a tier 2 account.
Yes.
What? Something about that is just backwards to me that, I am pushing myself as a leader to really diversify the people that I am bringing onto the team. It doesn't and when I say diversify, I don't mean age. I mean, well, a little bit age, but experience, background. Have these people been customer facing before? If so, in what capacity? I want diversity there. But in a lot of cases, it's also like realizing what motivates every single person on your team, right? And when you're having a hard day, go back to that motivator and let them know that, look, this is one day in, your 45-year, maybe more career. Like, get over it. We're good. Next day is a new day. Wake up, grab Starbucks, and let's get going.
I love that. That is amazing. I wish you were in Boston because we're doing a meetup November 14th, and the subject is diversity in sales development. And I am just in like violent agreement with what you're saying about opening up the vision of what a sales development rep could be beyond just like the very set program. I mean, out here, it's ridiculous, like how we only look at a very certain type of person to be a sales development rep. And it's so ridiculous because they run into that same thing. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the budget for this headcount is very low because they think that it's like an entry level position. But, like I completely agree with what you're saying. It shouldn't really be that. There should be more of a budget. I mean, on the other extreme, you have like Tito, who writes blog posts about how you should pay them $200,000 a year because they're so critical to your organization. But, it's somewhere in between. Like, I agree. We need to start looking way outside to diversify. Yeah.
We do this on Sixter or on Wednesday afternoons, and we actually have it this Wednesday. We do book club with a handful of different sales development teams throughout Indianapolis. And one team that does a phenomenal job at this is PFL. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but Print for Less, they're a direct mail company. And I asked their leader, I'm like, how did you build your team? And for them, it came down to how they were compensating. I'm not recommending this by any means, but for them, there is no variable comp to how their reps are paid. It's purely salary, higher base than what's normal in the Indianapolis market. But because of that, she's been able to attract a certain group of people. So I think it goes back to just like always knowing what your team is lacking when you're looking to grow or make your next hire, and ask yourself like, okay, now how do I work backwards from what we're lacking and go into those groups and those networks to find the person that we need to round out our team.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I feel like we're in kind of an echo chamber here of everyone. There's just a real lack of creativity about how to make these teams, work the best. It's just like, hey, this is what everybody else is doing. Let's do it exactly the same way. But it's interesting, like when you go out to non-tech companies, I mean, PFL's tech, but if you go out to non-tech companies, a lot of times they have a completely different idea about how to put the teams together. And it's like, oh, you don't have to pay a commission. Like you can make it a higher salary and make it, more appealing to people that have been in the industry for a long time, but just want to be, just want to do sales development. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And David, there's a sales leader at SalesOft. His name's Derek Grant, and he always jokes. I met him when I was working at ExactTarget at the time. He used to sell Pardot, which is Salesforce's marketing automation tool. And he always says he's the guy that, sold the acquisition when ExactTarget bought Pardot at the time. He was the sales rep that demoed the platform, and ExactTarget said, yeah, we want to buy you for X amount. But now he's at SalesOft. He's leading their inside sales team. He's a phenomenal leader. And he was recently in Indy, and we were talking about hiring and how important it is. And he really pushed me on our hiring profile. Like for me, I like people who have a few years of professional experience because I think business acumen is hard to teach. I like someone who's been customer facing. At the time, I liked someone who maybe had some sort of sales development experience. And he said, stop, listen to what you're saying. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, okay, so you're going to continue to hire people who maybe were an SDR somewhere else. They burned out. They got mad at their boss. They didn't like their team. Now they're on a prowl to find another sales development gig. So you're just recycling through the same people time after time after time. Doesn't that get old? It's like, why wouldn't you invest in maybe either younger talent that is more green and you can mold and you can shape and you can teach them the Sigster way versus taking someone who already has these habits, or bring in someone who's super comfortable being in front of people and has been client facing, but maybe has a completely different background. And as a leader, you got to teach them tech and Sigster, but that's easy. That's easy stuff to do. But he really kind of just changed my mindset around stop just recycling through the same people time and time again, because you're going to get the same result, right? Diversity is how you really change the way that your team operates and goes to market.
He's such a great dude. I love that guy. And I follow anything that he puts out because it's just the way that they hire people at Sales Loft. It seems like, they have such a great culture there that they attract people that are just you are so freaking cool.
And Derek is that.
It's amazing.
He's a guy, and Scott Roth, my old boss who I followed to Return Path, he's like that too. He's a leader that you just, whatever he's doing, you want to follow. And I think about that a lot in my role is how do I create a culture where we all want to be marching the same march and going the same direction?
Yeah, that's amazing. I've learned a lot from Kyle Porter about the importance of culture and boiling it down and communicating it. And he's a great communicator as well. And that's when we do the manager training for Tenbound, that's the first thing that we start at that nobody even thinks about really. You just in sales development, it's the science, how many calls are you making and how many people are you talking to? It's wait a minute, we need to take a step back. What is the culture that we're creating on the team, and how does that go into how we hire people and the stuff that we're talking about?
And I know, David, going into this call, you told me to think about what's working and what's not working in sales development today. And, our mindset, my mindset, our team's mindset is it's about creativity, right? And it's about hiring the right people. But, we here at Sigster, we sell to marketers, and regardless of who you're selling to today, it is a noisy world right now, right? The sheer number of emails and phone calls that folks are receiving is ungodly, right? Our phones listen to us now as we're talking, and you go on Instagram and you see an advertisement for what you were talking about. We are just bombarded right now. That, when thinking about how to be successful in the sales development role, it starts with finding a product or a service that you really believe in, finding a persona that you like talking to. For me, that's marketers. I love marketers. I know I always want to work with marketers. And it's about really knowing who your ideal customer base is and being so freaking creative with how you capture their attention. Everyone's doing email and phone, but who out there is doing direct mail? Who's sending stickers? Who is following them on social, and not just sending them that invite and trying to hard sell through the invitation, but truly following what that person is posting and commenting and leaning in and engaging. Who out there is inviting folks not only to their events, but other events maybe in their community that their customer or potential customer might care about attending. But I think just the importance of being more intentional than ever is what will make sales development folks successful.
Agreed. So I want to go with that point because I agree 100%. Creativity is the key differentiator right now. And I think the challenge is that the metrics are not there to be able to understand how people are being successful. And so it seems like sales development managers fall back on, the tried and true dashboards that they have. How many calls did you make? How many emails did you send? How many, LinkedIn things did you send and stuff like that? So it just becomes more spam out there in the marketplace. So, I mean, how do you know, or do you just trust your team that we're going to do something creative? We don't know if it's going to work and we can't really measure it, but we'll see what happens. How do you know if it's working or not? Yeah.
Well, and the great thing, David, is you can measure a lot of this. We do measure it. So, we have, and I don't want to get too tactical. If anyone has specific questions with how we've set it up, I'm happy to answer them one off. But in our SalesLoft instance, we have all of our emails, all of our social touches, and all of our phones directly going into Salesforce. And then we're able to create manual activities when we send a handwritten note or we invite them. Well, I guess an invite would be like an email or a call, but you can manually create these things. So then when you drive that opportunity, you can really dive into the activity and understand all the touch points and campaigns that cause that person to convert. So it's become, It takes a little bit of muscle, but it's definitely possible.
And then, okay, so that's the science of it. So what about the art of it? Like, how do you, I mean, if you're like lacking creativity and you're trying to come up with ideas and stuff, how do you collect those ideas from the team and come up with ideas and stuff like that? We're in like such a, office environment, and I think the creativity is hard to like spark in people.
Yeah, and we have the luxury of still being a smaller team. That like something I'm really thinking about as we grow is how do we preserve all of the great things we're doing today, but make them more scalable? So for us, how we really encourage that creativity is at the end of every day, we do the points game is what we call it. So we get together and it's an opportunity to debrief our day. And every week we reward points for different tasks. And I change them based on where we fell short the previous week. So for example, this week it's based on phone connections and 10 dials before 10 a.m. But that's really an opportunity for all of us to get together and talk about what was working, what wasn't working, but then allow the rest of the team to offer creative advice around how to drive the meeting or the conversion. So that's been really helpful. But once again, like falling back on your network. I can't tell you how many times I reach out to other sales and sales development and even marketing leaders to get advice around what they're doing, what's working, what's not working. I think sometimes people can be like nervous to share something that's going really well for them because there are so many people doing what we're doing, but all of us are doing it in our own unique way that aligns to our brand. That the more you can share and ask yourself, okay, would this work for my team? Would it not? Because not every idea is going to work. The better off you'll be. Like just lean in, be engaged, learn, and ask yourself, will it work for my team?
I love it. And it's funny because if you feel hesitant about sharing what's working and your creative ideas, just don't even worry about it because people will just listen to it, but they probably won't implement what you're talking about. They'll just move on to the next podcast or whatever. So exactly. I just found like that whole thing, and even it's like competitors and stuff. I mean, don't even worry about it because there's so many ideas floating around out there that people are what lacks is the execution of ideas. Like that's the difference. And so, but to add to that, David, like I'm a big believer in, if you think about Tenbound, right? Like you have your brand identity that you want to be known for. You have your values and your mission that you spit out to everyone, right? But within organizations, it's also so important for each internal team to have their own framework as well. And for us, like, we know that one of the biggest challenges in sales development is retention, career progression, and like just retaining people, right? Because it can be a harder role hearing no all the time. But, thinking about how, as a sales development team, what really defines your team and what are some programs that you can create to really define your own identity and make your team be that destination workplace. So for us, it's been things like our weekly book club. It's been things like the SDR wars that we're hosting again in December. It's been, making sure that we're following the right groups on LinkedIn and really engaging and commenting and leaning in there. But think about your team's own brand identity and how that'll affect how you go to market and how you communicate with your prospects. That is so funny because I remember when I first started being an SDR manager at Glassdoor, this guy named Luke Stoddard, who still works at Glassdoor. He's like one of the funniest people on earth. If you're listening, Luke, I love you, man. He took me aside. He's like, you need an identity for the team. And he's like, why don't you call them the Tiger Sharks? the tiger sharks. And I was like, that is so cool. So we went out, we made a logo, we had like t-shirts and all these things. We're the tiger sharks. And it's so silly, but it's fun, it adds a little fun to it. Yeah.
So much fun. I love it. And it creates, we always say our sales methodology is Midwestern nice. We're in the Midwest, and that's how we do business. We never want to sell you more than what you need, but my team is a family, and we tell people that when we interview them. We're like, look, we are family. We're going to be all up in your grill. If you're not cool with that, this probably isn't the place for you.
Yeah, family. That's so funny because Kevin Vanes, the VP of Sales, is so nice. And he came to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about sponsoring the sales development conference." And he's like, "But I'll tell you, if it doesn't get approved, I'll be totally honest with you." And he came back. He's like, "Yeah, we're not doing it." I was like, "You know what? That was really nice, though, because at least he told me, right?"
Yeah. Well, and it makes like I think about this all the time. It makes that healthy conflict and giving feedback that much easier when we all know at the end of the day, like we all love each other. We're all here like fighting for the same mission. So any feedback comes from a very, very loving and supportive stance.
I love it. And I know you were saying you weren't crazy about moving back to Indy, but now you're very happy, it seems.
Yeah. And it's funny how things come full circle. The founder of Exact Target, and talk about like a culture god, Scott Dorsey. I don't know if you know that name, but he, after the acquisition happened, he and a handful of other executives at Exact Target started their own venture capital firm that's called High Alpha. And we were one of the first companies that they invested in. So it has been in Indianapolis. It's amazing seeing what a handful of leaders have been able to do for the tech community. I think we're number 2 in the Midwest right now for like booming tech scene. And our recent funding that we just got too is from Edison Ventures out in the New Jersey area. And for them, they love our team, they love our product, they really believe in our mission. They also love that we're in the Midwest, and it's a new market for them, which is super exciting.
So they can get in there. Okay, so we're going to have to do a meetup. We'll do a sales development manager meetup.
Yes.
In Indy, and we'll come out and it'll be rocking. We'll have a
Let's
great
do
time.
it. I'm happy to help organize it too.
All right, you heard it, folks. Sarah said it. That'd be awesome. Hey, I got to ask you one more thing. The graphics at Sigster are amazing, and it's such a talented. Is that an in-house graphic designer, or do you guys use an outside?
It is. Shout out to Anna Zimmerman.
Anna Zimmerman, you are awesome.
She's amazing. We were recently at Dreamforce, and we handed out these otters. And I got to say, like at conferences, I'm someone who rolls my eyes at the people who just come by and try to get as much swag as possible. I'm like, what are you doing with all of this? Don't you have to travel home? But I could not believe how our otter stickers that we had made were flying off the shelf. And our sticker game is something we've been kind of known for, that's actually a part of our sales development strategy. We all the time, after we have a great connection, we have persona-based stickers that we'll send to an event marketer, a director of marketing, just saying, hey, thanks for the time. We're eager to chat with you. Here's a badass event marketer sticker to throw on your laptop.
I love it. Yeah.
It was awesome.
They're amazing. And, it's definitely a unique thing that you guys have. And, we got a couple minutes. I was saying beforehand, I was shocked when I did a sales development manager training and the group of 8 people didn't know about Sigster and what you guys were doing. Give us the quick download for people that have not, this is such a no-brainer to get this going. What do you guys do? And then tell us about the next gen stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, it really is a no-brainer, David. I actually bought Sigster when I was at Return Path, which is kind of what led me ultimately to Sigster. I love their product so much, I joined their team. But yeah, what we're doing here at Sigster is we're changing mundane employee email, and we're allowing you to drive relationships through employee email. So, what we've been known for is, if you think of that boring email signature, what we do is we allow you to centrally control that email signature and run a targeted ad campaign through every email that your sales team is sending. That banner will dynamically change based on who that sender and receiver is. So it's this idea of always having the most important content right in front of your most important folks. But recently, because of the work that we've done within the email signature space, what we're now doing is we're also offering data around your most authentic relationships. So, David, if you think about what we're doing is we're building a one-to-one relationship, right? Employees at your organizations are the primary drivers of relationships. This data allows for you to understand the strength of your relationships at scale. So then as a marketer, you can use this data to say, okay, where are my relationships heating up? Where are they dying down? How are my ABM efforts going? And how does that affect my next marketing play? So if I had to summarize all of that, you absolutely need to check out Sigster. And what we're doing is we're helping you drive relationships through the Gmail, Outlook, O365 inbox.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you guys, if you haven't gotten Sigster hooked up, it's crazy. I mean, you send out so many emails every day. You can control the whole situation, and now you can start to map out your relationship strength. It's crazy. Anyways, so Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing this wisdom. I'm really excited to jump in on the SDR wars. I'm really excited to set up a meetup with you in Indy. And it was great sharing your wisdom with our audience here on the Sales Development Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It was a blast. And if there are any questions from any of the followers, feel free to shoot me a LinkedIn note, and I'd love to continue the conversation.
You got it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
David.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum 100% focused and dedicated to sales development, with your host, David Delaney. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. Your support makes our show possible. If you are struggling with your sales development program, contact us at tenbound.com for a no-obligation exploratory call. Again, that's tenbound.com.